painting to photography, from beadwork to woodworking, KQAL FM on the campus of Winona State University presents Art Beat. Art Beat highlights the work and accomplishments of local artists from in and around Winona. Support for Art Beat is made possible by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund.
Poems were written, submitted, read, and even etched into concrete. Today on Art Beat, we get a taste of the 2021 Winona Poetry Walk. A reception for the Poetry Walk was held at Peters Biergarten in downtown Winona, and we were there to capture some readings by some of the poets, as well as some of their thoughts on poetry in general. Roses are red, violets are blue. Stick around as we bring some poetry to you. Today on Art Beat.
Kimberly Blazer.
Hello, Winona. It's great to be here. I'm really honored that my poetry will now be featured in your downtown area, and I offer my thanks to the Arts Commission and to all of you for coming out. These ways we practice Minnow Bamadazi win. Beneath deepest summer skies we swim among Anishinaabe star stories. Here sing to night wanderers. We tame the too thin needles that hunger, thread them lavishly with colored seed beads, counting and layering. Here too, we study the palest sketches of beauty, trace each toe of animal tracks, touch watermarks on ancient ledge rock, watch pollen color June lakes golden, then sepia, whisper to each helicopter seed pod that lifts on Minnesota winds. This good path becomes a tune we hum beneath days, steady as the chest's drumbeat, clear as that oldest language, yes, of belonging. Miigwech.
Next up, we have Jerome Christensen.
Botany 101. For an hour, I sat beside a plant. It soaked up photons, spit out oxygen, all so indifferent to my watching.
Jerome Christensen, and that was Botany 101.
Okay, fantastic. First off, do you think, did poetry choose you or did you choose poetry? How did you get into it?
It's just part of the world. I don't think that, I think that, we all get scared off by Miss Grundy in third grade when we've got to memorize something that's really awful. And then we're introduced to Bill Shakespeare, and if we can't do as well as he did, well, then we're no good. So, and it's just when you realize that you're no good, it's fun. Away you go.
Right. How about, a lot of people will say things like, oh, I wish I was creative. Some people are born with it. I'm not. Like, what do you say to that?
Bull. Okay, you can edit that out, but no, everybody tells stories. Everybody writes notes. Everybody has ideas. I mean, you look around here, everybody's yakking away. If you stick a microphone in front of them, you're going to get down what they're yakking, transcribe that into words, put it on paper. You've got writing, you've got a poem, clean it up a little bit. That's what an editor's for.
Right.
You're in business. Everybody does it. Everybody does it.
In your opinion, what makes a great poem?
A great poem? That's going to be different for everybody. It's whatever grabs you by the ears and grabs you by the heart, grabs you by the stomach, makes you go, huh? And yeah, I mean, some people, it's exactly what anybody likes, what moves you. It's there is no objective standard as far as I'm concerned.
It's not really like a competition where there's stats, right?
Well, some people like to try to make it that, and some, and you go to college, and somebody's going to put a grade on it, and that's about as meaningless as anything. But
Right.
Poem it's an entirely personal thing. Everybody's got their own personal mantra or whatever that they recite and think of, and
Right.
yeah.
It's art, right?
It's art. It's life.
It's life. There you
It's
go.
life. It's expression. It's
Yeah,
what we
same
do.
thing, right?
Yeah.
Next, we have a poem by Nancy K. Peterson being read by Carol Borzakowski.
Sky defines flat land, except in cornfields, where towering stalks guzzle water and leave cracked water, cement earth. Wave your way out between cutting-edge leaves, snapping thistles, snagging, stumbling stones, to return to safe prairie. Only sky surrounds you.
Marcy Ratliff.
Thank you, Carrie. So this poem, as I was writing it, I was thinking of what I would want to see on the sidewalk in front of my feet, and really grounding into the place, like where we are in Winona and where the poem was going to be in downtown. So this poem involves a couple of directions. Maybe you can kind of imagine them as I read. It's morning in Winona, and somewhere east of here, a baker drops a donut into hot lard. That way. And somewhere west of here, an eagle dips over the spillway looking for breakfast. And here you are, right here, bravely moving into the day. Thank you.
My name is Marcia Ratliff, and my poem doesn't have a title.
Okay, that seems pretty common for this event. A lot of the poems didn't have titles, or they were excerpts from a poem. So, first off, did you choose poetry, or did poetry choose you? How did you get into writing poetry?
I like the way you phrased that question. I think it probably chose me. I have always loved writing since I was a kid, and then in college I got into poetry writing and ended up majoring in English writing. So I spent quite a bit of time in poetry classes, and my senior year I did an independent study of poetry as well.
Nice. So just kind of gradually gravitated towards it. Nice. Also, a lot of times people will say things, like, I'm not creative. I wish I was. You're either born with it or you're not. Things along those lines. Like, what do you say to that kind of stuff?
I take a more open view of human consciousness. I think we're all capable of so much more than we give ourselves credit for. So I think everyone's creative. I think we all have something to share with the world in that regard. And sometimes it's just a matter of finding a medium or a vehicle that makes sense for you.
Something that fits, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is kind of a big question. What makes a great poem?
Ooh, that's another fun one. I think what makes a great poem is something that it just makes you, or makes me, I guess, I'll talk about my experience with the poem. It makes me sigh when I finished reading it. It's like, or it makes me set it down because it was so powerful. Sometimes people talk about it blowing the top of your head off. Sometimes there's the light bulb moment in a poem, and you read a line or you imagine some image from what's in the poem, and it changes your perspective. So that's what I love to find in a poem. It's like finding a piece of treasure.
Right. So it's not really nuts and bolts. It's more like, if it makes you think or pause or feel.
Exactly.
Okay, nice. When you're writing a poem, how does the inspiration come? Is it like all at once and bam, you write the poem out? Or is it like line by line, and then you marinate it for days or weeks or whatever? Like, how does that work for you?
I try to create the conditions in my life where creative time and poems will come to me. So I try to set aside time where I'm thinking, daydreaming, staring off into space, sitting in a park. So those kind of moments, those quiet moments are when my brain kind of comes up with something fun. So I try to make space for that. I think for this poem in particular, I was thinking quite a bit about the place where it was going to be in the cement and imagining what sort of thing would fit for that place. So sometimes I'll follow a thread or a theme of something I want a poem to produce, but more often I'll start with something that I've seen or experienced that day that inspires, kind of just to start.
Right. Well, that's interesting. So you guys knew exactly where they were going to be placed. Or you didn't, but just like general?
We knew they were going to be in downtown, in Winona. Yes.
But that helped inform your writing then. I kind of like that. Like what kind of things did you think about that people might be thinking or feeling as they, see your poem?
So my poem talks about sort of where Winona is in the river valley. Of course, it's sandwiched between bluffs and river, and also in sort of the middle of the city. So to the east, you have Blato's Donuts, and to the west, you have the spillway and the river continuing on. So those kinds of things are kind of the bookends for the poem. And then it also has just a little bit of lightness. Like, I often look down at my feet when I'm walking. A lot of us do. So to find something that's encouraging or beautiful right at your feet, I think, was the other thing I was going for.
Right. Well, that's interesting because, your poem had kind of roots in, place, and so that's kind of interesting that people in that place could see that poem, and I'd be curious to find out, what the poem makes people feel, whether they are, from here or just visiting or have never been here, or that would be kind of interesting. Is there a way, I don't know, is there, a feedback channel for this where we, people could write in and be like, oh, I saw your poem?
I don't know. That would be super cool. Put a little QR code on a stick next to it. Yeah, but there's no way to know. And that's sort of the beauty of it, too, is it's something that's set out into the world like a good music track. And you ultimately don't know what that collision is going to be like with other people's minds.
Cool. I think the unknown is fun, so I like that a lot. What if I asked you before about people who think, creativity, you're just born with it or not, and I don't have it, I wish I did, things like that. What advice would you give to someone who's like, you know what, I think I could do that and I'd like to get into it? How would you advise them to, get in or start?
I think just start playing with words. Sometimes I'll just look at a page and the first word that jumps out to me, I'll write that down and then turn to another page and find another word. And then as those words accumulate, your mind will start making connections and you might find your way, you might not. Sometimes just the play and the exercise of it is what gets me started.
Yeah, well, and then you're working those connections too and those muscles, so to speak, in your brain. Yeah. Is there a place, do you have your poems published, or is there a place online people can go and view more of your work?
Yeah, I have a website called tornpaperpoems.com. I started a project where I write little tiny poems on pieces of torn paper and take pictures of them and post them. So you can read my work there and find it on Instagram as well at tornpaperpoems.
Cool. That is fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Bill.
Next up, we have Michael William Doyle.
This won't take long. It's 17 syllables. Buffalo, mirage, the limestone bluffs get up and shake their shaggy manes.
Next, we have Dan Eastman.
Good day. Cast with grace and etched in silence, each moment harbors an eternal glance as imagination encircles the world. Thank you. My name is Dan Eastman, and it's an untitled poem.
Did you choose poetry or did poetry choose you? Is it, how'd you stumble into this?
Well, I'm a visual artist, and over the decades, excuse me, the idea of titles become a metaphorical issue as well. And then you start collecting images and titles, and to a certain extent they start melding after a while. I know quite a few visual artists who actually do poetry after a long journey of working on titles. The problem is words are not the same as visual, but metaphors aren't always in words, so it becomes entwined.
Yes. Nice. I like that answer. How about this? A lot of people will say, I'm not creative and I wish I was. Some people are born with it. I'm just not. What do you say to that kind of mentality?
I say practice. You'll get better.
Excellent. And then in the last one, what makes a great poem?
Well, I think what makes a great poem is a great community. Meaning, what makes any community work in any realm? It's what's shared, it's empathetic, it's a tendency to want to contribute and share.
Steve Shield.
This is a poem written about my dear wife with one of our boys. I don't remember which. And since this won't take long either, I want to say that the poem that I'm going to read is going to differ by one word from the poem that's in the sidewalk. I didn't know if the judges would like a gender-specific reference, but this is the poem. It's called Mother. Rhythm of rocker, wicker chair, comforting creak on hardwood floor, bygone yawn of sleeping boy who need cry in the night no more. Thanks.
Sabrina, I told her I wouldn't butcher her last name, and here I go doing it. Schlichting! Hooray!
This is probably the shortest poem I've ever written, so petrichor memories pull me in, reminding me what it's like to begin again, and I let the falling rain envelop me. I am free. So beautiful, so serene. Neverland was a dream. Thank you.
Next is Parker Forcell.
It's like we found the beginning again, lying there in the dewgrass, two kids out beyond themselves, making no excuses for what we'd become.
Parker Forcell.
Okay.
I don't know that they were titled, but it's it's from a longer poem. It was just because you could only have a certain amount of lines, so it's actually the last stanza of a poem that's called First Love Again.
Okay, sounds good. So did you choose poetry or did poetry choose you? How do you feel about that? Like how you got into it?
I think it definitely chose me. I mean, the first poems that I ever wrote were the summer of my junior year in high school. I fell for this girl from another high school, and we started going out that summer, and those were the first poems that I ever wrote. And I got to college and started out in business, but was always writing on the side and writing poems and things like that. And I ended up switching my major to creative writing and with an emphasis on poetry. So that's kind of how I really, really got into it. Yeah.
A lot of people will say things like, I'm not creative, I wish I was. Some people are born with it, I just wasn't. Like, what do you say to that?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, because I'm so involved with the music world too. I think everybody can express themselves, and everybody's taste is different. So it's kind of like, I don't know how musicians do it, because for me, I've always been like hard for me to put it out there to people. And a long time ago, I did have a couple chapbooks of poetry that I put out, and it's been years actually since I was writing or ever like showed anybody my poems until just during the pandemic. There was so much isolation and quiet time that I all of a sudden started writing a lot again. And so I have a lot of poems, and I started the press with Eddie out at Driftless Books, and so been publishing poets and kind of gathering my poems in a way, thinking, someday I'm gonna do another book once I feel like I have enough of them that I think are ready.
Nice. Because sometimes it takes that, right? Something to like jar you into like, oh, maybe.
Right. Yeah. Or I think a lot of times, I don't know if it works this way I know it works this way for songwriters, and I think it does for poets too. Some line will just drop into your head, and that'll be the start, and you kind of have that line in your head, and maybe you're walking or something, and then you sit down. Or a thing that I started doing that I never would have thought is that I write notes on my phone. Because it's always with me, and I never used to think I would ever do anything technology like that. Always writing in a journal, and then all of a sudden I haven't had a journal for a long time, because it's like, your computer, you can just write it down on your computer. But yeah, I started doing it on my phone, and I've got tons of stuff in there now, and it's actually worked quite well, because you can take something from in there and send it to yourself. And then you can easily put that into a Word document or something. So it's been an interesting modern exercise that my whole first career or whatever in poetry, which was 20 years ago, it was before there was even a computer, really. The computers had just kind of come out, but no, everyone hand wrote at that time. Everybody I knew that was a poet hand wrote. They didn't maybe use the old typewriter kind of thing, but nobody was using a computer to type up poems. Yeah,
for sure. How about in your opinion, what makes a great poem?
Wow, I don't know. I think, like I said, everybody has their own taste. I've never liked rhyming stuff. And so it just doesn't hit me right, rhyming stuff, or kind of like a lot of Shakespeare stuff is kind of rhyming, and I really stumble over that. So for me, I usually like poems that are a little more surreal, or aren't like trying to hone themselves in on rhyme or something like that. I do like haiku, which is kind of like forcing you into a certain way, but because of the way that haiku makes you work, it ends up making you create something surreal. So I think that's kind of why I like it.
And our last poet this evening is Lucas Stengel, with the cheering section.
I too lean towards 17 syllables. MWMF haiku. Drums, guitars, vocals reverberate off brick walls. Downtown comes alive.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, everybody. All of the poems that were selected for this year, you can find them on the maps. If you didn't get one, Lee, if you could raise and wave your hand, he'll be able to point you towards a map. We'll also have that online. You should just be able to search for that online, and we'll have an electronic version available should you need it. Again, we want to thank everybody who submitted, all of the poems that were chosen, all the poets who were chosen. Thank you so much for being here and for reading for us this evening. It's a joy to serve on the Fine Arts Commission, and I think my fellow commissioners share that sentiment. So we thank you all so much for coming this evening. Lee, anything else?
A group photo of
Oh.
all the poets.
Poets, you're not allowed to leave yet. So please come up here once we give you one more round of applause, and we'll get a group photo. So thank you, everybody.
Thanks to all the poets that participated in the Poetry Walk for reading and joining us today. Also, thanks to the Winona Fine Arts Commission for supporting the arts in our community. More information about the Winona Poetry Walk can be found at cityofwinona.com. For more conversations on art, tune into Artbeat Tuesdays at 12:30 right here on 89.5 KQAL. I'm Bill Stoneberg, and we've been talking about the Winona Poetry Walk 2021 on Artbeat.
Artbeat is written and produced by KQAL FM on the campus of Winona State University. Visit us on the web at kqal.org.